This is an Evergreen Media Network studio production.
Broadcasting from the Evergreen Media Network studios in Vero Beach, Florida. It's Huntin with Heather.
Hey y'all, welcome to Huntin with Heather. I am your host, Heather Huk. This is season 1, episode 15. If this is your first time, welcome. This show is dedicated to all those who love to hunt, love the outdoors, and those who want to learn more. Whether you're a seasoned hunter or a green hunter, this show is going to be packed full of information. We're going to talk deer, turkey, and everything in between. So grab a seat, sit back, and let's talk hunting. So you guys, spring has sprung, which means it is spring turkey season, and they are fired up, as well as the hunters out there are fired up as well. So, and I couldn't have thought of a better guest to come on today. He wears many hats, I'll say that. He is the director and community marketing of Mossy, co-founder of NOMAD and Huk, conservationist, NWTF board member. He's from South Carolina, which means he's a Clemson alumni for you Tiger fans. But really importantly here, he is a fanatic turkey hunter. I'd like to say he's probably master of the wild turkey. And so without further ado, Mr. Jason Hart, thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, but I'm going to quote my favorite author, a gentleman by the name of Archibald Rutledge, that passed away about 40 years ago. He was known as the poet laureate for the state of South Carolina. He also wrote a lot of great magazine articles back for like Field and Stream and Outdoor Life and other really cool magazines, 100 years ago. And he had an article he wrote, and I think it was called his 359th Gobbler. And in there, I'm not going to quote it exactly, but he said that after killing my 359th Gobbler, I feel like in my education in hunting the wild turkey, I'm not through kindergarten yet. And I very much feel the same way. And as far as being a master, I don't think there's any master out there as far as turkey hunting. I've just happened to go a lot, and occasionally I've gotten lucky, but my most recent hunt was yesterday evening here in South Carolina in pretty terrible weather, and I had two, and one of them was coming right to me, and then he just didn't like what he saw, and he went the other way. So I felt about that big, and I felt like I'd never even been turkey hunt before. So they have a great way, those amazing birds, of humbling people.
Yes, they do, for sure. That has happened to me, and I'm sure to you many times through your years of hunting turkeys. I had a few girls come in a few weeks ago. We guided so close. And of course, that's what you want. You want them to get, that turkey, and yep. Turkey won. They had different plans.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I started in Florida, a little bit south west of you 3.5 weeks ago, as I always do. And I know that there's probably a lot of Florida listeners, and Florida is my favorite place to hunt in the country. I love it down there. So I hunt all around Lake Okeechobee, and it's my favorite place in the world to hunt.
It is. I was going to ask you that, with that, because I know I've followed you for years. We know each other for years, and I always see you down here in Florida. And
yes, maybe starting off the season.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
just my favorite place to be, and it's just something special about Florida, and it's the first season in the lower 48. South Florida is, and anyhow, Osceola is a little bit different. I think they're meaner than any other turkey, and I think if you were to put an Osceola in a ring and for a death match with all the other subspecies, I think they're the meanest, most aggressive of all of them.
Really?
I just really like chasing them.
I know. There is something about, now I haven't had the chance to chase, except, we'll see the Osceola and the Eastern, but man, I don't know if it's the elements, the swamp, or, we don't just hunt the swamp, but, I don't know if it's that, but there's something about them, about those Osceola turkeys, and maybe because you can only get them down south. I don't know what it is.
I agree. There's a mystique to them, and it's a lot of it's to do with the time frame. It's the first time of year. I think a lot of it has to do with terrain. It's really cool. It's during springtime in Florida. It seems like it's usually foggy in the mornings, and a lot of times they appear out of nowhere between the palmettos and the live oaks and the Spanish moss and the pastures, and Not that they act any different than other turkeys do. I think they act a lot like Easterns, and if you were to be put an Eastern in the same environment, they'd act very similar. But anyhow, Florida's a special place to chase turkeys, and it's the only place in the country to get an Osceola wild turkey. So if you're into chasing grand slams, then there's only one place to do it. Florida's got the monopoly on that really cool subspecies, which tend to have a little bit longer legs, darker wings, and genetically usually longer spurs.
Interesting. I didn't know about the spurs. I knew they had the longer legs. They're a little smaller than, like,
sometimes.
Right, true.
Sometimes. So turkeys where I'm at right here in South Carolina, and they could be as close to my yard, even though it's turkey season, and I think they know better than to be in my yard during turkey season because I can hunt my land. But our turkeys in South Carolina are very, very similar. Osceolas usually tend to have darker wings, but the genetics of the spurs on Osceolas, and if you think about it, spurs, if they're researchers obviously think that they're a secondary sexual characteristic and that the spurs are used for fighting. And if they are used for, which they're obviously used for fighting, they might be used for some other, in some other areas. But if they are, there's the thing about Florida is there's not a lot of rocks compared to other parts of the country. A lot through the Easterns range and in Texas and in the Rocky Mountains where the Merriams are, all those different subspecies live in a rocky terrain. Whereas Florida, for the most part, the soil in most of Florida is pretty sandy and pretty soft soil. So the spurs don't typically break off or get chipped off like they do in rocks, say in Texas or in New England or anywhere else. So if, I think that the birds get to reach their genetic potential, and if fighting is a reason, which establishing pecking order obviously is, and that usually that genetic gets passed on from generation to generation. So areas of sandy soils as opposed to rocky soils will tend to pass on, or at least that's what we think in science. And
that's
obviously from a research standpoint, that's at least why they think Osceolas tend to be a little bit longer or a little bit sharper than some of the other subspecies.
I know I heard something one time about, they were saying some turkeys too, where there's certain area their beard drags, and so it will actually make it shorter as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So a turkey's beard grows about 6 inches every year, and a beard is made out of keratin and melanin. So keratin's the same thing that our fingernails are made out of, if you will. So they're similar to our fingernails, but they have melanin that keeps black. So when a turkey feeds, he drags. And the way a turkey feeds to drop his neck down is the beard's going to get about 10 inches long before it drags on the ground. And then once it drags on the ground, it's constantly wearing out on the ground, and the filaments of a beard aren't very thick. So basically a turkey's beard, if you have one that grows longer than about 11 inches, sometimes 12 or 13. And you will see that sometimes in Florida and other states. That just means that the turkey, for some reason, has got a stronger beard or maybe a little bit longer legs or has a longer neck than others. But yeah, that's why you don't see commonly 15, or if you ever hear of anybody say, oh, these birds have a 16-inch beard, they grow them big on our place. No, that's a lie. They don't.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll get one like that. But I've probably had my hands on about, I don't know, probably 1,000 dead turkeys, and I've only seen about 2 or 3 over 12 inches long. So that's why.
Interesting.
And then another weird misnomer is a lot of times you'll have an adult gobbler that has a short beard. And what people call that is typically referred to as beard rot. And most people, it's a kind of a wives' tale. People think that a turkey's beard will get mites in them, and that's what causes the adult gobbler to be short. But that's not the case at all. What it is it's a lack of melanin being produced in the beard because the turkey was sick. So like in humans during COVID, if you ever got COVID, which I did, I'd get ridges in my fingernails, and your fingernails grow over time. And that's very similar to what happens to a turkey. They get an illness or get sick, or their immune system gets depleted and they quit producing melanin. And so they'll get a white strand in that beard. And when you have that white strand, it makes the beard weak in that point. And then when they drag it, it breaks off. So there's another random daily wildlife biology tip about turkey beards.
I love
a lot of turkey hunters are. Yeah,
It's
so
great.
a lot of turkey hunters just call a beard rot or mites got in it, and that's not the case whatsoever. It just means that turkey probably about 6 months ago had a bad turkey cold or a bad illness, and he recovered and he's
Mm.
fine now. But it just caused his beard to get a little bit white and break off. But he's still quite the mature long beard,
How many
and it'll grow back.
how many turkeys have you had with multiple beards though? Have you had many of those
I've
or
seen a lot. I found that they are very a lot of it's based on genetics, and different areas have different areas of genetics. For example, where I've hunted in Mexico for Gould's wild turkeys, I was in a camp, and there were 12 of us in a camp, and we were in Agua Calientes, which is high in the mountains in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico. And out of the 12 turkeys, I think 10 of them had multiple beards. So it's obviously
really?
very prevalent genetically. Florida, on the other hand, I've seen a couple triple bearded Osceolas, every once in a while double beard, but I think a lot of it's based on genetics. I've personally I've killed one triple bearded bird, one double bearded bird, or excuse me, one quadruple bearded bird, and probably about, I don't know, half
Wow.
a dozen or more, a dozen or more double bearded, one four bearded. So a lot of it's very genetic. Places like I've had a lot of friends in Nebraska and Kansas kill multiple bearded birds, a lot of multiple bearded birds in Tennessee. And basically, if you have a property that has multiple bearded birds, more than likely they'll continue to do so. It's not, wouldn't say it's uncommon. It's pretty common, but
Right.
I'd say it's probably, I don't know the exact number, but it's probably around 10% or less of mature gobblers that typically will be double beard. But it's definitely a super cool trophy, and very, very rare.
Well, maybe you can.
Get,
so what about the bearded hen? So what is that? Like, what's behind that?
Yeah, so I'd say that's pretty decently common, and again, that's based on genetics,
Okay.
as well. So I've seen certain places, for example, Texas. It seems like it's very prevalent in Texas in my travels that there's lots of bearded turkeys or bearded hens there. I've seen a lot in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
In Florida, there tend to be a lot. They are legal to
Yes.
harvest. I prefer not to, because a bearded hen, a misnomer is they are typically that they can't raise young, and that's completely false. I've known people
really?
that have shot bearded hens and they take them to the taxidermist and they're full of eggs. So if you
like a
want more
barren
gobblers, I would
turkey.
encourage you not to shoot bearded hens. Let them, they're just as viable. And this is completely has nothing to do with science. This is a purely an observation from my standpoint. I have discussed it with different biology friends of mine, and there's really no way to study this theory that I have, but I've found that bearded hens tend to be more aggressive, and a more aggressive hen typically leads to a more dominant hen, which is usually probably the hen that's going to do the most breeding. And I don't know if that may be because they have a little bit extra testosterone in them. That's completely just my random theory, but and again, I think it'd be tough, and there may be research come out one day that they determine that bearded hens nest a little bit better and have better successful hatches than non-bearded hens. There's never going to be enough money in wild turkey research by universities to probably be able to determine that, but it might come out in other research. But yeah, bearded hens are definitely cool, but I think they're probably, some people say if you've got bearded hens, you might have multiple bearded gobblers. I don't know that that's the case. I don't believe that's true. Maybe there may be that genetic on both sides of it, but anyhow, my takeaway is if you want gobblers, I would encourage you not to shoot the bearded hens from a conservation standpoint.
Sure, absolutely. And with that, so let's talk a little bit about conservation and what it means to you, because I know you're very involved in it. I mean, I feel like if you're a hunter, we all are. If we hunt, I mean, we are the largest contributor to the conservation. But I know you are very involved in NWTF. You are on the board, correct? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I've as far as conservation is concerned, I got a degree in wildlife biology, and as far as conservation is concerned, without conservation, we wouldn't have anything to hunt. So very selfishly, as hunters, we want to be conservationists because we want to have plenty of game to chase. from a wildlife biology standpoint, hunters' dollars and the purchases of firearms and the purchases of ammunition and things of that sort are what contributes dollars in addition to hunting license sales. So, from a conservation standpoint, back in 1937, the Pittman-Robertson Act became enacted through the United States, which puts an excise tax on all firearms, on all ammunition, on archery equipment that goes directly back to states to manage for wildlife. So if you are just a shooter and you don't hunt, if you buy a handgun, then you're contributing back to your state's wildlife. And that money is from the Pittman-Robertson Act is divvied up. But also hunting license sales are extremely important. They go back to state agencies. And from a conservation standpoint, you have nonprofits like the National Wild Turkey Federation that basically work with states. They raise money and work with states. And a state like where you're at in Florida is really good. If, let's say, there's a wild turkey research project and the National Wild Turkey Federation raises $100,000, the state, different government grants can match those monies. So right now there's a lot of really cool conservation projects going on in Florida in conjunction with the University of Florida and the National Wild Turkey Federation to help understand a little more about the Osceola wild turkey. There's not been a lot of research done on Osceolas in 40 years. And much like, many other parts of the country, Florida in particular, the state of Florida, the coasts, the population around the coast are going in and in and in on populations. And so when people hunt in Florida, they think there's a lot of turkeys, but we don't know for sure. We don't know the research behind that. But yes, I'm extremely involved. But one time in my life, I thought I was going to be a wildlife biologist in college. And I realized I wasn't very good at statistics. So I figured I better get in sales and marketing instead. But many of my classmates back then are still doing that. And if you hunt, you definitely, if you buy a hunting license and you buy guns and ammo, you definitely contribute to conservation. But there's a lot of ways to go above and beyond, such as joining nonprofits like the National Wild Turkey Federation or Ducks Unlimited or even the Bonefish Tarpon Trust. If you like to fish, it all goes back. And one thing that many non-hunters or even anti-hunters, if you enjoy wildlife in your state agency, what I've always told folks to encourage, even if you don't hunt, but if you like wildlife, if you like seeing songbirds, if you like seeing, different types of animals that are non-game animals, then even if you buy hunting licenses, the monies go back towards non-game conservation as far as what states' natural resource departments go. It divvies up, and hunters fit the bill for everybody that enjoys wildlife in America. So the North American conservation model is pretty neat, and it's a lot of things happen through those excise taxes and through hunting license sales that I'd say your average hunter may not be aware of, but it's certainly important. And as far as Mossy is concerned, the company I work for, we have a division called Gamekeepers, and we've started a Gamekeepers Grants where we do different fundraising projects for that makes money for whatever type of research we deem fit. We work with a lot of different universities. We work with wildlife professors at University of Georgia, University of Florida, Tennessee Tech, LSU, all over. And for example, we have a wild turkey stamp that we sell for $15, and we take monies raised in that and give it right back. Or at the National Wild Turkey Federation, we had a big old party one night where we gave away free beer, but we required a $20 donation, and that $20 donation we put all right back towards conservation. So it's really fun to work for a company that puts their money where their mouth is as far as supporting conservation and supporting wildlife in America and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's funny because you were with Mossy a long time ago, and you evolved and you started.
I was, yeah. I'm the only employee that's been hired 3 times. So I
you
found
keep coming back.
Opportunity, and yeah, I keep coming back. It's a good place and good people, and the Hayes family that owns it are absolutely incredible. And so yeah, I've chased dollar bills in other opportunities, and I realize that Mossy is a happy place for me, and it's a really good place to work. So yes, I've done several other things in my career with several other companies, but yeah, back at Mossy and really enjoying it.
Yeah, I saw a picture on Instagram, a while back when you first came back there, and you were like, "I'm back home."
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you can tell it was just a sincere, like how you felt it sincerely.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
No,
I want to
absolutely.
ask,
No, Mossy Hook's a fan. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So real quick, so I heard this the other day, and I've mentioned it several times. So with the conservation, I heard this, and I thought it was so true. Mentoring too is conservation.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, young and new hunters, whatever.
Well, flat out, if you're a hunter, I encourage you to take a kid hunting. The overall, the overall population of America, if you like to hunt, the population of America keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The percentage of hunters in America keeps getting smaller, although there's not quite as much land and not quite as many opportunities. A lot of people have the idea of, man, it's not good to recruit more hunters because that's going to be less opportunity for myself, and that's a very selfish attitude, because hunters and the hunters vote, and protecting our hunting rights, number one, is extremely important, and having more pro hunters out there, even if a kid doesn't continue and become hardcore passionate about hunting, getting them out there and experiencing it, and also just the education of realizing, kind of field to table ideas of where food comes from. A lot of people in America don't realize that food just shows up at a grocery store. Many folks don't realize how meat gets there, whether it's from farming, whether it's from or any kind of food from agriculture or for hunting. So yeah, taking mentorships is near and dear to my heart as well. I'm also on a new foundation, new board that's coming out, called the Austin Hunter Chamberlain Memorial Foundation. My friend, Dr. Mike Chamberlain at the University of Georgia, his son passed away a couple years ago, and his son was a big time hunter and would take other friends hunting. So he has started a mentorship organization I'm going to be a part of, and there's lots of other great organizations out there, and state agencies are also doing a good job through Pittman Roberts and Act Money, of giving opportunities out there. But it can be very intimidating if you've never hunted as a kid or even as an adult, because or fishing for that matter. It gets pretty difficult. So many times being a mentor and taking somebody out and showing them the ropes cuts that intimidation factor by a lot. So I was fortunate I got to hunt early. I didn't have many mentors. I was just a kid that got interested in it and started reading magazines and buying VHS tapes and learning on my own. But that's not the case with the majority of the youth these days. There's a lot of other distractions that weren't around 40 years ago when I got into hunting, such as the internet, and video games are way better now, even though the video games we had as little kids were pretty cool back then. There's a lot of other distractions. So there's a lot of other things kids can be doing other than the outdoors, but giving kids the opportunity and let them know how awesome things are, and outside hunting and fishing, and how special those moments outside can be, is something I certainly encourage everybody to do. And it's as adults, we do get tied up, want to have our own time hunting, but taking somebody else is definitely become a priority of mine, more so as I get older.
I couldn't agree more. Just having the youth out there, and they're just so excited, and it's just, and it's our future generation. So real quick, absolutely. we're gonna take a quick break. You guys hang in there. We've got so much more to talk with Jason Hart, and we're just getting started, y'all. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.